Hi Misha, let's say hi to Analog Sound.
Hello.
Hello. And today we're gonna talk about a very cool device which is called SpearPhone, is it right? Could
Yes.
you tell me more about it, please?
Okay, well actually we call it SPearphone, where SP abbreviation stands for Stereo Pravda. So SP, Stereo Pravda earphone, SpearPhone. Even if some people are allegedly telling us that to put spears inside the ear canal actually lead to some I would say unpleasant association with the customers, but we thought it's cool to call them SpearPhones. And the model we're actually presenting here called SB7, where SB abbreviation stands for second band. And by second band we mean second band of ear canal.
Okay.
So it's SB7, and by 7 we mean 7 drivers inside
Well,
of our earphone.
what is so cool about it?
Well, actually, the thing is, to cut it short, we started in high-end audio, which is home audio. And when it started to decline a few years ago, I've spent about 20 years distributing in Russia a lot of well-known foreign audio brands: Magnipan, Krell, Apogee Acoustics, Audio Research, Vandersteen, VPI, Manley, you name it. So all in all, at the peak of my distribution career, our company represented in Russia about 40 to 50 some of the best known brands in the world in high-end audio. So when high-end audio started to decline a few years ago, I started to think how we can transfer the best attributes of high-end audio on a portable platform. I mean, like 20 years ago when I started, we would all use home landlines, talking on the phone. So now, all of us are using cellular phones with no loss in communication. So my question was, is it possible to transfer the best attributes of high-end audio on a portable platform, the same way as telephone conversations were transferred from land, home, line platform on a cell phone communication? And I started to research this idea. It took me about 5 to 6 years. Basically, the guidelines for our design are taken from home audio. And by that I mean, for instance, if you look at our earphone, all drivers are on the same axis. So there are 7 drivers inside, and all of them share the same axis. Like in home audio, all loudspeakers would have drivers pointing in the same direction. And this trivial idea, it's actually trivial on the first glance, because if you look at most of the ear monitors on the market, their drivers shoot in all the various directions. And the reason is, and here I'm coming to the crux of the matter, the reason is most of the earphones on the market are built according to 100% universal appeal principle, or 100% universality, which means they're trying to make products which would appeal to all 100% of customers on the market, making them comfortable as a first priority. And we decided to approach it with a typical high-end audio tradition, making it as uncomfortable as possible. Which means, instead of trying to base our ideas on 100% universality principle, we approached our design from the opposite side. Namely, we sacrificed some of our universality for the sake of 100% optimality in terms of sound quality. So instead of compromising sound quality, we insisted on a design which would never compromise sound quality, but of course in the process of developing this product, we had to sacrifice some of the universality. So I know I promised to you to cut it short. I didn't manage to cut it short, but I cut it as short as it was possible.
Right. And what about, what do people say? What are the feedbacks right now?
It's a disruptive product, which means that there is a saturated market with certain approaches to the technology, to the marketing, to basic guidelines for the designs, and then we show up and we say, no, we're going to approach it from the completely opposite angle. And of course, it's not easy to break all the rules, to change attitudes, to present a product that is completely hand-built by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Because high-end audio was basically trying to capitalize on dormant, for mass marketeer, energy. Just to give you a quick explanation, if we would take every technology, let's say 50% of that technology is realized with no customer's participation. It's called mass market product. By definition, mass market means that the customers are not involved or not heavily involved in realizing the potential of this technology. The same with audio. And then there is a 50% of dormant energy, which if customers would be more and more involved, would allow to realize this 50%, the additional 50%. So in that sense, portable audio at the moment is mostly, I would call it meat-fi industry, the same way as audio was meat-fi industry in 80s. And then high-end audio companies, I actually showed up on the scene trying to realize the dormant energy. So for home audio buffs, it's taken for granted that they are heavily involved realizing the potential of their equipment. That's why there is a concept of wife acceptance factor, which means that some of their energy is in a direct collision with energy of other family members. But they insist on their hobby, trying to put humongous, huge loudspeakers in living rooms, spend ridiculous amount of money on some questionable accessories. They spend a lot of their time crawling on their feet, changing cables. So they realize that their involvement would give them a reward of some additional achievement. But with portable audio, it's in that sense undeveloped, still undeveloped, where people think that all the products are different only in terms of price, which is directly proportional to the quality. So that's why when we showed up on the market and we actually came armed with completely different philosophy, it's not easy to penetrate the market. Of course, people listen to our products. I would say most of them are positively impressed. But then when we list them, some of the aspects of our design, like for instance, our tips on the SPearphones are not user replaceable. It's either dealer, distributor, or we are in charge of changing this silicon ear tips. The procedure is relatively simple, but because it's installed with a high level of precision, let's put it this way, we can't do them user replaceable. So when customers say, oh, your tips are not user replaceable, would say yes, and say, oh, it's really strange concept. But we insist on it because it allows us to achieve that sound quality that was an original intention behind our project.
So you are not going to change anything?
Well, we actually would like to, but unfortunately it's not possible. I mean, some of the solutions that are in the marketplace, they are done with that comfort paradigm in mind. But we think that the highest achievements are on the opposite. They are because of discomfort. The same way like in home audio. How comfortable would be to have like a huge turntable in your living room, and then the cleaning machine next to it, and then all this, ridiculous accessories that people are being entertaining themselves. In a way, it's uncomfortable, but people are dealing with this because they realize that it's the only way to get to the highest plateau of sound quality.
Could you please show me their
other
device?
things?
Right.
Yes. Okay, so here what we've got is we've got a player, which is an old Hi-Fi-Man 801. It's actually
it's not heavy, right?
It's actually heavy, but again, no pain, no gain. And that's actually a guiding principle behind all our efforts. And when I would say this, people would be like, oh, it's very funny. And it's not funny, it's actually a serious intention. I mean, no pain, I'm not talking about literal pain, but I'm talking about the heavy involvement, the passion, the effort could be called paid. And of course, as a result of it, as a result of this additional effort, additional, spendings, additional
sacrifices.
Yes, you will get a much higher level of quality, and that's why we're actually getting such rave reviews. Because on the one hand, the reviewers admit that it's probably one of the best sounding earphone on the market. But on the other hand, of course, and we're aware of that, they say, oh, it's very uncomfortable.
Another question, what is sound for you? What does it mean?
Well, I was
What do you find it?
formed, educated, and actually, in a way, I'm an embodiment of what's called high-end audio. The way it was presented in end of 80s, beginning of 90s in the United States, where it was like a whole tradition of ideology regarding sound quality, and it was formulated mostly. The formulation of that principle is ascribed to Stereophile magazine of 80s and the Absolute Sound magazine in the United States, where J. Gordon Hall from Stereophile and Harry Pearson of Absolute Sound were like two stalwarts of high-end audio. So they actually built the foundation in terms of ideology for the whole industry. And the whole industry was driven by the principles that these two people formulated. And I saw those principles like with my mother's milk in that sense. And when I was distributing for 25 years all this American high-end audio gear, I assimilated all these guidelines which allowed me to evaluate the equipment from that foundation. And it's basically the same principles that we're using to develop our products. As I said, we approached our project as an attempt to transfer the best attributes of home high-end audio on portable platform. And I have to tell you, at this point, we're the only company which claim the same thing, that we're trying to transfer the home audio best attributes on a portable platform.
And when did you get hooked by music for the first time? Do you remember when you were impressed?
Of course, no, I mean...
And what was it?
Yes.
What band, which piece? What?
I have to tell you, there's a saying that everybody's listening to music they've been listening to when they're 14 years old. It's a well-known saying. And I have to tell you that actually confirms my own idea that music is a language, the same way science is language. And in a way, you soak a language with your mother's milk, which means with humans' development. At a certain point in time, there's a window, figuratively speaking, in your head, which opens up, and the same way as you soak your native language, the same way you soak music language. So for instance, when I was 14-year-old, everybody was listening to heavy metal, hard rock of that era, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Alice Cooper, and I couldn't avoid it, because that music was around me at that time. So that music that formed me, and high-end audio in that sense, is a tool to master a new music language.
What are you listening to now? What do you prefer now?
Yeah, I would say that most of my music diet is jazz, some acoustic music, and high-end audio was instrumental in making me learn that new music language for me. Because when I started to be involved with high-end audio, I listened to completely different music, and high-end audio made me, bit by bit, day by day, year by year, to learn a new music language. And when people are telling me, oh, it's the same with me, and I was not involved in high-end audio, I'm listening to jazz most of the time, and I'm answering them to listen, and especially in Russian, слушать. And to appreciate in Russian it's слышать. The difference is only in one letter, but it's a principal difference. It's like when you hear a foreign language, you could get a basic meaning of what people are saying to each other, but you don't appreciate all the subtleties in the language. But when you advanced in certain language, of course you appreciate it to a much deeper level. So the same with music. You can listen to jazz and classical, but they just pass you as a sonic wallpaper. But at the same time, if you advanced and appreciate in a certain music genre, of course you appreciate it on a much deeper level. And that's how I saw the main functionality of high-end audio. That main functionality of high-end audio is actually a tool to help people to learn a new music language.
And another question: you told me about that decline of in the audio industry a few years ago. Why do you think it happened?
Okay, well, it's actually there are 5 main reasons as I see it. Well, first of all, when I mentioned that people were listening to music, they've been listening 40 years old, especially in the Soviet Union, it was obvious that music was like a religion, it was a window to the world. And at the time where we wouldn't have news in truth, 2 major newspapers in Russia, Pravda and Izvestia, and we wouldn't have truth in news, Pravda не было известия, в известиях не было правды. At the time, music was the only window to the world, especially for young people. Other windows were not available. We didn't have internet, we didn't have music that we would like to listen to, we didn't have books we'd like to read, we didn't have movies we'd like to see. So to us, music was the only outlet, real window to the world. And for us, it was like a religion. But then, say, end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, and again, Russia is a very good place to see the difference, all the other windows started to appear. No censorship, you could get any book, you could see any movie, you could travel anywhere you want. And actually that band, Deep Purple, that we adored when I was 14 years old, I heard that one of the recent albums, the world premiere, was in my native town of Chelyabinsk in US. So which means that the situation changed dramatically and you can't, assign the same functionality to the old media. The same like religion. 100 years ago, I would say 90% of all people in the world were religious. And now, there is no way you can count as many people to be deeply religious.
So there is no hope for the future generation,
Yeah,
for people like me?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So I would say the second reason was technological reason. So the reason I'm having all this equipment here on the table is because for the last 10 years, actually it was a huge leap and bounds in terms of technology development. So that small devices which we are carrying in our pockets, in terms of sound quality, they're amazing. And the reason portable audio didn't exist 20 years ago because you couldn't shove a turntable in your pocket. So that's a technological reason. The second reason, I'd say demographic reason. So younger generation doesn't appreciate the same technological gimmicks, devices, and gadgets that we took for granted. That's a third reason. The fourth reason, and actually one of the fundamental reasons, and the problems with audio, it doesn't have any standards. Like for instance, if you look at video is steadily improving. There is no doubt about it. Because there are standards which define video quality, image quality. And audio, because it doesn't have any standards, lead to a situation. Can you imagine somebody carrying back a TV set from 70s and watching it? It's ridiculous. But people are taking back to their homes technology for audio made in 30s, 40s, and 50s, and it's actually the best. That in that sense, the future of audio in the past. So that's the fourth reason. And I would say the fifth reason, and I could give you probably another 2 or 3, is too much competition in the industry. I mean, with lack of standards, there were so many companies making all this equipment which would not conform to any standard. And that's how they populated on the market and started to actually prevent each other from achieving of any of success. So coming back to your question regarding how I see future, I still think that music accompanies human civilization from its very beginning. And I still believe that music's language has got a lot to say, and a deep meaning can be content, can be inside a music message, let's put it this way. And that's why as humans we still have the same basic emotional behavior and we have the same psychology. I believe in this. We still crave for all these music messages. But the problem is, first of all, we have to utter these messages in a relevant language which would appeal to younger generation. And even technologically there's a language. I mentioned that, for instance, there are several different sound flavors or language dialects in audio. Like, for instance, you could have horn speakers, you would have planar speakers, you would have electrostatic speakers, you would have dynamic speakers. And people who were involved in trade, they were always confirmed time after time that people who would listen to horn speakers would never listen to planar speakers. People who would listen to planar speakers would never listen to electrostatic speakers or dynamic speakers. And why? And the reason is, as I see it, is because, again, at a certain forming period, somebody who would start to be passionate about something, they soak a certain language, let's say a language of horn loudspeakers or language of planar loudspeakers. So if they speak a native language of that certain particular technology, they can't appreciate the subtleties and deep meaning of a different technology. And that's how I explain why old farts, like put it this way, are still involved in home audio. They're not interested in portable. But young people who are interested in portable, they don't care about home audio equipment. So it's like a literal generation gap. You have home audio, and then after the gap you have portable audio. So when you ask me about how would I see a future of high-end audio, of course, and that's one of the reasons why we started to be involved with this project. We believe that if we would appeal with the same deep meaning of music and all these messages, serious messages in serious music, people would appreciate it. It would take time, it would take effort. Probably for these younger people it would take a certain forming period. Like for myself, it took me years until I started to appreciate serious music.
Do you have any piece of advice for young audiophiles?
But that's exactly what we're doing. Like, for instance, what I brought today, a player cost about $800, which by current standards is not so much.
Right.
Yes, our earphones are quite expensive, $2,500, but then the whole system is $3,300, which by current standards, when a phone costs about $1,000, I don't think it's too much. So we're not trying to say like $3,500 cartridge on like $10,000 turntable, which needs another $15,000 phone amplifier, which would need another $20,000 worth of cables. We're actually trying to stay practical. And that cable is actually made for us also by hand by our partner in Japan,
Why
Chris
this
Movigo.
color, by the way?
Well, it's actually manufacturer suggested it. And I thought, why not? Because red is actually, first of all, it's easy to see.
Right,
Like, for
yes.
instance, I'm wearing
Of course,
black,
video.
so red. But on the other hand, who knows? He thought that maybe it's a good idea. We are from red country, Russia. From West, they still perceive us red.
Any colors are possible, any other?
Yeah, and also it's practical because still we need something dark because it's soils and there's all sorts of contamination. So we need something dark. We've been choosing between all black and black with another color. So from all the colors, black and white, we decided black and red would be the most appropriate.
Okay, so you have black as well.
No, I mean,
No.
we could do black,
You could, okay.
but we decided on black and red as our color scheme.
And I've also read that you wanted to play some musical instrument, and that for some reason you didn't manage. Could you please tell me?
Well, actually, my
more?
parents tried to make me play piano, but
Right.
I was useless. But
What was
yeah.
the reason? Why did you do it?
Yeah, and that's actually what I want to elaborate. I think the reason is the talent to appreciate something as rare as in talent to make music. You know, most of the musicians whom I met in my life proved this time after time after time. The best musicians whom I know, very good musicians, they don't really appreciate, I have to tell you, it would sound preposterous, but still, they don't really appreciate the depth in music, if we put it like a very broad concept. Because they are very good professionals, they have certain skills, they do have depth in that particular genre, but if you take a step to the left, a step to the right, they don't demonstrate the same intuition for a different type of music. So in that sense, a talent to appreciate something, be it paintings, be it music, doesn't always coincide with the talent to do it. And that's why critics, some people dismissive about critics, saying, no, critics, it's just failed musicians or something. Not necessarily. I would say the talent to appreciate something. And that's possibly why I never had an opportunity to even consider myself as a musician, but at the same time, a lot of people admit that I have a talent to appreciate things. And as I said, in my opinion, it's two different talents.
Who is your favorite musician?
Well, at this point, I like people like, let's say, very diverse. Let's say Jack Jones from 70s, Barbara Streisand, let's say Chick Corea, let's say Melody Gardot, some old masters, of course, like Miles Davis. It's kind of interesting situation when people ask you what's your favorite music, you're always stuck.
Right,
like,
I know.
Really,
yes.
what's my favorite music? Because, well, first of all, it shifts and changes. Like today.
But I mean, those who remained. That you named those who remained for you for
well, first of all, there are some musicians from my early past, which still significant to me, like Billy Mackenzie, from the late singer from that band Associates, from 80s in England, which in my current context probably would be completely irrelevant, but it's still my favorite musician from my past. Then, as I said, when I started to be interested in contemporary technology, high-end audio and related things, then my interest started to shift. And I'm not afraid to admit, even Diana Krall, to me, is a relevant musician. Even if it's a bad tone, in audiophile circle, to admit that Diana Krall is a good singer, I still think it's a great singer. And actually, my involvement with Diana Krall was very rough. When she came to Moscow the first time, I would say in 2004, 2005, I went to see her in Tchaikovsky Conservatory. And I was like disappointed to a point when after the third number, I stood up and left. And people like look at me with angry faces. But then I was in Los Angeles, I came for a Consumer Electronics show in Vegas, and a friend of mine actually brought me to Catalina Jazz and Bar Grill in Los Angeles. It's a jazz club where on Mondays they would jam. The musicians, the jazz musicians would jam on Monday. At that Monday when we showed up, Diana Krall musicians were playing just for pleasure. And we've been sitting like 1 meter away from these musicians. And it was my critical point in time. When listening to these musicians without Diana Krall, I suddenly started to appreciate her musicianship. Because originally she was the focus. But after that night in Catalina Jazz and Bar Grill, my focus, listening to her music, shifted to the musicianship around her. So she's still a good singer, possibly, but it's not the focus. To me, the focus around Diana Krall is all the musicians around her.
Thank you very much. It was Misha Kucherenko for Analog Sound. Please join us on Facebook.
I will, certainly. And I do appreciate that you went through all this effort to see me. And hopefully you'll have a chance to listen to our product.
Of course we will.
And then hopefully you will provide us with the feedback.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you.